us. Up next is going to be Jordan Blackman. And Jordan, let's see if I can get this straight, Jordan. There we go. Just to remind everybody, Jordan has experience with Ubisoft, where he worked on the CSI franchise. I think he's going to share a little bit about that. He was just recently at Zynga, so if anybody wants to ask questions about that hot potato. He's recently started his own company called Wander Media, and he's got some really exciting things that he's doing with that. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Jordan.
Thanks, Beth. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I want to talk about an experience I had when I was at Ubisoft working on the CSI brand, and why should you care about this? Well, I think as people studying transmedia, there's a lot of like amazingly creative new bottom-up ideas that are coming up, and it's great to see that. This is going to be a kind of a different story, a story that's more of a top-down perspective, and it's sort of what it's like in the trenches with a big brand, a pre-existing big brand, and trying to do some transmedia storytelling with it. So you'll I think learn a little bit about my experience and hopefully some practical lessons that will be useful for you. So I said CSI was big, and probably most of you know that. To give you some numbers to tie to that, CSI's worldwide audience was estimated to be 73.8 million viewers in 2009. 2009 is the year that we were building the products that I'll be talking about today. As recently as this year, CSI was named the world's most watched television show for the 5th time. So clearly a huge brand. Now, it's also kind of a classically cross-platform brand. While there's not a lot of movies, there is an exhibit at the Chicago Museum of Science and Industry, a series of books that actually has 18 books, 18 novels, just for the Las Vegas version of CSI, multiple comic book series, a Las Vegas attraction at the MGM Grand, board games, children's educational experiment kits where you can play with chemistry and forensics, a bi-monthly magazine that I think actually stopped maybe a year or so ago, but that ran for 5 or 6 years, and obviously the other television shows in addition to Las Vegas, and what we're going to be kind of focusing on today, which is the video game franchise, which had over 12 entries or something like that. So, big property, and I think it's one that we should care about because it's a real-world story of taking something like this into a bit more of a transmedia space. So just a quick note about who I am. I'll go through this kind of quickly. I started off at Disney Interactive, where I worked with brands and was doing a lot of website stuff. And actually, there was sort of some interesting things we did with Tron that were transmedia relevant, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Then I went to Nova Logic, where we did a lot of military first-person shooter, kind of traditional hardcore multiplayer online games, and I'm not going to talk about that today. And I went to Ubisoft, where I worked on a number of games for all sorts of different demographics, actually. You're seeing here some tween girl titles and one that was targeted towards older adults. But I do want to make a quick mention about Jewelry Designer, because it's kind of an interesting transmedia thing where in this DS game you could create your own jewelry. You ran a shop. You create your own jewelry, custom design it, and we set it up so that you can go online, send your design in the mail to a jewelry manufacturer and have your custom made jewelry handmade and sent to you in the mail. You could also buy other people's jewelry. But I'm not going to talk about that today. And then I worked on these CSI titles for about 5 years. These are just some of them. And am I talking about these? I'm not talking about any of these today. What I want to talk about are these. So these are the CSI games that released in 2010. Now, you're seeing the top titles, which are just a multi-platform release, and then this was a unique game, Unsolved, and then we brought CSI to Facebook. And the reason I want to talk about these is you know, there was this long tradition of doing these CSI games, but I was actually getting ahead of myself. I'm talking about my history. After CSI, I went to Zynga. I worked on Frontierville and Castleville, and these games, they actually call this department that makes these games Storyville because of the deep story that they try to convey through those games. I'm not going to talk about that today. And now I started an organization called Wanderplay. I'm spending next year traveling the world searching for stories at the intersection of cultural traditions, and play. So not so much video games, but card games, board games. And I'm not talking about that today either. I do also consult for Adrian Crook and Associates, which is a social mobile design consultancy, and I teach game design at the Bay Area Video Coalition, just up the street. So, what I am going to talk about today, CSI, what we did and why. I want to take you through some of the thought processes that went into some of the key decisions in this series of games. So, one of the things we did is platform-specific branding. So if you look at like when we had released games in the past, you see the exact same cover, the exact same title, and the exact same content on multiple platforms, right? Typical cross-platform way of doing things, but of course that's not transmedia storytelling, is it? Because if you do that, you're telling the same story on every platform. So here we have different branding. We have Unsolved, and you can't really see it, but it's Fatal Conspiracy back there. And you know, you might think, well, why don't we always do that? Well, it's actually a challenge to. It's harder to market the games this way because you only have so much money to market each game, right? So when you have unique brands and unique stories, then you have to market them uniquely to the audience. You need the consumers to understand that they can buy both, and there's two different sets of stories. And that's additional messaging that is actually kind of complicated to communicate and tricky. So a lot of times, you know, the marketing department, they're going to want to have one single story. So figuring out how you're going to get the best of both worlds there is something that you should have a strategy for if you're planning to take a transmedia approach on different platforms. So like in this case, what we kind of compromised on was sort of splitting the baby, where you see that there's a similarity to the visuals. So we could do that kind of advertising that we've all seen at the end, where there's like a bumper with all the different platforms and they're showing the exact same thing. We could get away with that, but we also had this unique logo, unique title, and all the stuff in the back showed that this was a unique game. And I bring up this marketing side because if you don't do that, then it doesn't matter if you've told a unique story in the different games, right? Because people aren't going to understand that that's available to them. So it's really important to lay that groundwork. Another thing that we did that was different but an important groundwork is in all these previous CSI games, the stories are disconnected episodes. So we do it like the TV show, right? You're going to get to play through different cases. But the problem is those cases are episodic. And they each have their own kind of beginning, middle, and end. They each have their own criminal. They go to jail at the end, usually. So that creates a problem if you want to tell a story across different platforms because these stories don't connect up. So what we did is, for the first time, we told stories and designed the stories so that they came together in a coherent way. And this is just a quick trailer that shows you what that looks like for one of the titles. Sound? Okay. Okay, there you go. See the two brands there. So we've laid this groundwork. We've got different branding strategies. We've got these stories that are integrated within the games themselves. And what I kind of hope to communicate is that we needed those things set before we could do the transmedia part, before we could tell one story in one game that connected to the other story in the other game, right? So when we had that groundwork, we were able to do that, but that comes with its own set of problems because you want each experience to be, of course, interesting in and of itself, right? But yet provide enough compelling properties so that you want to go to the next platform. So this is how we did it in this case. We created this character called the Queen Bee, who is behind, not quite all, because you need your red herring, but who's behind a lot of the cases in Fatal Conspiracy. And you sort of bring that all together. And at the end, she apparently dies in an explosion. You guys don't mind that I'm giving this away, right?
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, right. You can just squint if you don't want to know. And then on the second platform, it's a story about what happens when this criminal mastermind is gone and kind of the repercussions that causes in the city. But ultimately, it gives you the opportunity to track her down. And we also did something brand new, which is bringing CSI to Facebook, which is definitely a talk unto itself. But I do want to mention a few key points about that. And let me give you this. By the way, I'm in this, which is very awkward for me to show it to you. My apologies. No? Maybe I need to do that. There we go. So we are bringing things together in the class so we can actually use the equipment of the class. So if we were playing together, maybe it was something like that, then the scene would like maybe I have something that is really useful to you, and you can just go ahead and use that.
We want there to be really compelling, but very, very compressed stories.
You come to work in the morning and you play it for 10 minutes and you get a little bit further in the story. You come back at lunchtime, you play it again.
You're not beholden to complete or finish if the phone rings. Or if you're in the office, your boss walks by and you have to change back to some productivity software.
We've always looked to end up with something that's quick, accessible, but then can give you depth to keep you coming back.
People want to solve crimes. They want to discover the secrets of the stories of people's lives, and that's something they can now do on Facebook.
Okay. Oh, I'm okay. I'm all right. So I want to talk about some of the key decisions that came up in this process. I think one of them that probably a lot of people who have played the game or who see the game are curious about is this look. So you see that it has this kind of bobblehead look, and I've been asked about that a lot. Anybody have any ideas on why we might have gone with this look? Curious to hear your thoughts. Yes.
Show more character expressions.
Show more character expressions. So like because it's a sort of a caricature, you get to see the big. Sure. But I think, okay, yes, that was a factor because we know it's going to be on a small screen. It's going to be sort of a screen within a screen on Facebook for a lot of people. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it because you've got representing TV stars and that's the thing you're across is that stuff?
That is always very tricky. But we do it on every platform in many different styles. We have a sort of a realistic cartoon style on the DS. We have I wouldn't call it a photorealistic style, but a much more representational style on console. So each of those has its own challenges in terms of getting the approval of the stars and their agents. So yes and also kind of no.
It could be similar with other Facebook.
What?
If you similar with other Facebook
Why? Why are other Facebook games have this look? Yes?
because it conveys emotion more clearly?
I think that's part of it. That goes to the cartoonish piece.
Because of access speed.
You want to market to a younger audience?
You know, it's not so much that we want to market to a younger audience, but I think a factor is we know that it's going to be a 13 and up. We can't really control that. Definitely a factor. The key reason is that we know that the Facebook play pattern is more of a regular play pattern where people are going to be coming to this while they're at the office, while they're at home, while something's cooking. And because of that, you don't want to depress them every day, right? That's not going to get them to re-engage over and over and over again with like this, grotesque crimes and criminals who really have this deep, brooding look. Another reason is that because of that play pattern, the stories have more of a caricatured nature, right? We have to sort of, have these little popcorns of activity that happen in the story, and you have to be able to just eat 10 little nuggets of this story. And it's awkward to tell a story like that and combine it with grotesque images and seriously deranged characters. So there is a whole group of reasons, and those are, I think, two kind of key ones that are worth sharing. So one of the things we did that was really exciting for us is we got to have a month where each episode that played on TV was paired with an episode that we premiered in the Facebook game. The way that we made this happen is because we do work with the writers from the show to write the stories on Facebook, and they were so excited about the Facebook game that they actually lobbied to make this happen. And it was obviously for us, it's a dream come true to be able to have a connection directly with what's happening on television in real time. And for the audience, it's a great way for them to experience the story on a more profound level. And I think this is a really great example of how we were able to have some transmedia elements in this big pre-existing brand. We also created a club that you could get membership to by entering a code into the game, and this club gave you extra benefits in the Facebook game. This was really important for a couple reasons, one of which I'm going to get to in a slide or two, but it really allowed us to take advantage of all the cross-marketing opportunities, and I'll talk about that shortly. So here, this is pardon the photo, I just took this last night, but every copy of the game on Xbox and PS3 included a code. You could enter that code in Facebook and you would unlock a year-long membership to Facebook Club Elite. So two things that are kind of interesting. One, Nintendo doesn't allow it, so we didn't have it on Wii, we didn't have it on DS. The other thing that's interesting is this is actually not the right way to do this. We're driving people from console to Facebook. We're driving people from a platform with a small number of people that costs a lot of money to a platform with a huge audience that they can play for free. What we want to do is go the other direction, right? We want to drive people from Facebook to console. Why didn't we do it? Because we didn't have the production capability to create new content for people on console just if they had played the Facebook game. So, one of those examples of how some of these strategies play out in the real world when you're dealing with a property like this. Cross-promotion. So, one of the great aspects, there are certainly some constraints that I've talked about, but you have a lot of opportunities as well with a brand like this. So, I talked about the code. We were able to pack in codes in CSI DVDs, in books. We were able to pack in the DVD ads into the console game. So, this sounds just like marketing, but it's more than that, because if you're not directing your audience across the different transmedia properties you have, you cannot tell your story. You need to have the audience actually moving around. So if they don't know about the DVDs, if they don't know about your social game or your mobile game, then they are not going to get that 360 story that you are here to learn how to tell. Talk about the codes, TV bumpers. We were able to cross-promote with CBS.com. So when you're creating pieces of your storytelling experience, make sure to create places where you can direct people around, so that not only for your own storytelling, but also to build partnerships. Okay, so this sort of just shows everything I just talked about in one slide. So you can see how that's supposed to represent the TV show. You have the show's writers, the actors' voices, the music. We tied stories between Facebook and TV. We tied stories between DS and console and PC. We unlocked some bonus content, etc. So you can see that we succeeded in some ways, but didn't succeed in all ways. There's no story connection between Facebook and console, or between handheld. And now it would be mobile, of course, but you know, we had places where we succeeded and places where we didn't. And some of the results, I'm actually going to go through this kind of quickly, but basically, we were able to do everything you saw on the previous slide in much less than a year. Production team of 3 people, and with many partners, and I'm going to show you a slide that shows that shortly. We were recognized as one of the top Facebook games of the year, and we were the first Ubisoft game to break 1 million MAU. We later broke 2 million MAU, and even today it's been about 2 years, but the Facebook game has about 500,000 people playing every month, and I'm very proud of that. So just some last thoughts. I left in the quotes. I took out the quotes in my other version, but that's actually not a quote. It's just something I wrote. But it's really important because, you know, we all know relationships matter. When, you know, as you go up that complexity diagram that we saw in the last talk, right? There's more people at each level. There's more relationships involved at each level. And if you were to see above the video game level, it would be transmedia, right? So relationships matter so much in this business. Every single partner here, except for the who, I believe. Every single partner here, I had worked with on a previous project. And I don't know if we would have been able to do this had we not had that previous experience. So, you know, the people that you work with, internally and externally, make a huge difference to your ability to execute on your transmedia vision. And the next slide, I think, is the internal slide. So I actually this is just off the top of my head. This is probably not comprehensive, but this shows some of the different internal groups that we work with, in addition to all the external groups that you saw on the previous slide. And what's interesting when you're doing something transmedia, if you're doing something social at a lot of traditional media companies, whether it's a game company or a movie studio or a television company, probably even if it's a web company, all the different horizontal groups that you work with, their success is not determined by your transmedia initiative. So you better have great relationships with those people because again, those things are going to be what make or break your vision for what you're trying to do. We should have been on mobile. I think this is, you know, obvious. There was a licensing issue that we weren't able to do something on mobile, but something that was a failure on my part is we never reached out to the people who do have the mobile licenses to see if we could make something happen. And that's something that when I think back on this, I know we should have been doing. So even if you know you're not able to reach a certain platform, think about what partners you can connect up with. Right? This is about telling stories on different platforms. This is about connection. This is about interactivity. It's not just for the audience. It's also for your process of what you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Thank you, Jordan. I'm sure you'll all have a number of questions for Jordan. One of the things I really love about this is it really is a transmedia approach to this. And the medium is the message, right? You take the same content, and on Facebook you can't have the photorealism because the content has to come in those popcorn-sized bites. So looking forward to talking a little bit more with Jordan. Right now, we'll be introducing our next speaker, Marty.